Hi folks, today I'm going to show you how to paint the D-Day aviation icon, the 1:48 scale C-47 SKYTRAIN model from Trumpeter. As you can see, I've already got the model ready and I'll be using our new real colour paints for this video. Due to the size of the aircraft, it's quite a large model, I'll be painting the fuselage separately from the wing. Here you can see the model all prepared for painting. I've covered up all the glass and transparent surfaces, as well as the cargo door, with masking tape. In this case I used this 18mm tape. So my model is ready for painting. Now I will select the paints I want to use during the process. They will mostly be shades of olive green. The real colour range includes several different shades of this colour. That means I won't need to be mixing my paint with other colours to get different shades. As you can see, I've already got 4 shades of olive green right here. However, I'll also be using some other colours such as this medium green and a lighter colour for some smaller details. There are even more shades of olive green, which I won't need, but I want to show you them. So here you can see the various shades of olive green that are available to me. To complement them, I will use these 2 colours for the camouflage effect, and of course I'll need something for the underside, for which I'll use a light grey colour, the Usaaf neutral grey. So now I've chosen all my colours and my model is ready for painting, I'm going to apply the first colour, the neutral grey, on the underside of my aircraft. First of all, I'll need to use some real colour thinner and obviously the paint. Make sure to give it a good shake. Once I have the paint ready for application, in this case the neutral grey with 40% thinner, I can start painting. I want to make small sweeps with the airbrush at about this distance, and you can see what the paint looks like on the model. There's a thin layer that covers the surface very well. I'm working with a pressure of 1.5 atmospheres and a 0.4 nozzle. Here you can see, in the light, you can see how fine the paint is and how it dries almost instantly. After applying my base colour, the neutral grey, I now want to add a little contrast using a different shade of grey, a slightly lighter shade, to brighten a few of the panels or areas of the lower fuselage. I'll use this colour to do that. I'm going to paint each one of the panels on the lower fuselage from the centre outwards. I'm not painting the panel lines, just the centre of each panel. You can already see the contrast between the light grey and the dark grey here. To a certain extent, it's already gaining a bit of depth. Here you can see the light and shade contrast effects on the lower fuselage of my model. It's much more noticeable on the wing, which is completely flat. You can see how I've managed to create some light from the centre of the panels outwards. Now my next step is to use the darkest colour in my range of olive greens, this dark olive drab 41926, and with my compressor set to 1.5 atmospheres I can get painting. As you can see, the solution is perfect and the result is magnificent. This is how my model is looking now that I've applied a full base coat in this colour. You can see the very fine finish and above all that some of the real colour paints have a satin finish, those used in aviation for example. The next step will be to use this colour, the normal olive drab RC901, mixed with this slightly lighter colour, the 894. Using a rod this time, because there are two colours, I want to make a much more precise mix. You can see it's like a glaze, almost transparent in fact. You can see that the colour is much lighter than the base coat I applied in the previous step, the dark olive green. Again, from the centre of the panels outwards, I'm going to brighten up the upper and front sections of the aircraft. You can hardly see it, but as the paint dries, the colour will become lighter. In this case, a more yellowish, sandier colour. As I said, always from the centre of the panels outwards. Now I'm going to do the same on the rest of the model. With the same mix of two colours that I used in the previous step, these two, I'm going to apply the brightest highlights to the top of the fuselage. Always on this part here, on the top of it and on the top of the engines. I'll use this sort of movement with the airbrush, as you can see, from front to back, and above all with more paint on the top of the fuselage. I'm going to go over the top of the engines several times, and here too, several sweeps, and especially on the nose and upper fuselage. I'll do the same thing on the horizontal stabilizers at the back. A little here and a little here, hardly anything at all. But you can see how the fuselage is a little brighter now. When it dries, you can see the transition between the colour shades and the wear effect in this darker area when compared to this lighter upper area. And I'll repeat what I've done on the fuselage on the wing. I want the front, the leading edge, to be lighter and the back to be darker, the base colour. You can see the light transition effects here. Now I'm going to use a slightly lighter colour, this RC883, which is a lighter shade of olive green. I want to brighten up a few panels, not all of them, but just a few of them at random across the aircraft. I was doing it here on the fuselage, but I've already done some on the wing for you to see. This is what it looks like when it's dry. You can see a slight variation in luminosity in the colour shade when using this colour, and I'll repeat the same process on other panels across the aircraft, on the fuselage and on the wings. Finally, I'll use the lightest colour of all, this RC884 olive drab faded. As you can see, I only want to use this colour on the top and front of both the nose and engines. As the colour dries, you can see the various shades of olive green that I've managed to create. Look here at the light transition from front to back, where it's darker because the aircraft will be inclined like this, with its nose pointing upwards. So there's going to be more degradation on the upper front of the fuselage and on these inner wing areas. And on the wing too, of course. You can see I've managed to create these different tones of olive green. So this is how my model is looking after having used all the shades of olive green up until this point. As you can see here on the wing, there are various shades of the green and quite a nice chromatic range. Especially on the wing here, you can see the various panels the highlights, the shadows, the contrasts that I've achieved. The final step is to use my original colour again, the first shade I used, this dark olive drab, and basically I want to darken some of the panel lines at random. This gradually creates volume because you will start noticing the difference between each of the panels as the paint dries. And this is the final result after using the full range of olive greens available in the real colour selection. You can see how the highlights and contrasts have dried nicely on each panel, and how I highlighted some of the panel lines with the darkest shade of green. And the last step is to use this medium green to create these green clouds over the olive green. I'll use the wing to show you exactly what I mean. Here you can see the solution I've made, and look at the distance I'm using from the surface, and then just gradually freestyle outline and fill in this sort of cloud using medium green to create the camouflage effect. Now I'm going to start painting the characteristic invasion stripes. I've already prepared the area where I want to paint the wing and the fuselage, so now I'll show you the colours. I'll be using two for this process. I want this off-white, a somewhat darker shade of white, the 808, and a matte white which is much lighter. You can easily see the difference between the two here. The darker one, this one, will be the first that I apply, and I will use it on the lower section of the aircraft from about halfway downwards, and I'll use the lighter one for the top half. So using a 40% thinner and 60% paint, I'm going to start applying the first colour to the lower section, the darker white in this case. I'll apply the matte white in the top. With the same proportion of paint to thinner, the lighter white goes on the top section. You can easily see the difference between the darker white on the bottom and the lighter shade on the top. Here you can see the difference between the white in the light and the white in shade. You can see it more easily on the wing, which I did earlier. As you can see, the front leading edge is bright, whereas the back of the wing is off-white. This is the direction of the light and the wind. The wing is usually always in a position that is slightly tilted upwards, and this is where it will go in the end. Now I'm going to repeat the same process as with the white for the black stripes. I'll use these two colours, as you can see, two different shades, a darker matte black and a lighter Russian grey. This one is for the shadow and this other one is for the highlights. The highlights using the Russian grey will be on the upper section and the matte black will be on the bottom. On the wing, the matte black is for the back and the lighter Russian grey for the leading edge. I'm only applying this colour where the black stripes will be, and only to the midpoint of the fuselage. Now I'll do the same but with the matte black on the bottom half of the fuselage. Here you can see the degradation from Russian grey at the top to the black at the bottom, and here the same. You can see the black grading affecting the direction of airflow and of the overhead light. After removing all the masking tape, this is how my invasion stripes are looking. They obviously don't have to be perfect because they certainly weren't at the time. Here you can see the transition from grey to black and from white to off-white. And on the wing as well, where you can see it a little more easily, you can see the transition from bright white to dark white and from grey to black, from the front to the back of the wing. And to see the overall results so far, I can insert the wing to get a general sense of the highlights and shadows that I've managed to achieve on these invasion stripes.